Welcome to our lesson about dimensions. Let's begin with a sketch on the top plane. Now I'm going to activate the line tool. Notice the readout that I've got near the cursor. Right now the line is approximately 23 millimeters long at 135 degrees from the first point. Let's move the cursor a little bit. Now it's about 21 millimeters long at 180 degrees from the first point. And I'm going to left-click and place the point for my line. Let's activate the circle tool now. When I drop my circle, I see that the radius of the circle is about 26 millimeters. What I'm seeing here is basically guidance information. In other words, it gives me an idea about the size of the geometry that I'm creating. Let's try a three-point arc. Here's the first point. Second point. You see that the length of the arc is about 50 millimeters. And as I prepare to plot the third point, I see the angle and radius values, 180 degrees with a radius of about 25 millimeters. I drag my cursor, the arc changes shape and size. The angle of the arc is about 250 with a radius of approximately 30 millimeters. Let's take a look at a different type of arc. First, we see the radius information. Now we've got the arc angle. Let's make it about 90 degrees. Lastly here, let's try a rectangle. Roughly 30 by 25 millimeters. Let's say if I try to create a square now, approximately 70 by 70, you see there's a point where the guidance displays x equals y. At that point, if I left-click to drop my second point, I've created equal relations between sides, i.e. a square. Okay, let's select all of these entities and delete them. Now activate the rectangle tool. I'm going to drop a rectangle right about here. Right-click and select to exit the tool. If I grab any of the corners, I'm able to freely move them. Let's add some relations to our rectangle. The first thing I'm going to do is add a coincident relation. Shift-select these 2 points. Coincident, OK. Basically, what I've done is attach a corner of the rectangle to the origin point. Now my sketch has 2 black lines and 2 blue lines. If I grab this top corner, I'm still able to resize the rectangle. However, the bottom left corner's fixed in space. In the status bar, I see that the sketch is underdefined. Let's apply some dimensions. Activate the Smart Dimension tool. The flyout offers various types of dimensions, horizontal, vertical, and so on. We're going to just use Smart Dimension for now. We'll select this line, grab the dimension handle, and drop it somewhere about here. The input box appears. We can either enter numeric values and then click Update, that's the red and green stoplight icon, or we can spin the wheel and specify the dimensions in this way. If we click this icon, this reverses the dimensions. We can also enter negative dimensions, and we're able to change the dimensions in increments. The value of the increment comes from the Increment dialog window. We access it by clicking this icon. Let's change this value to, let's say, 5 millimeters. Now a click of the arrow adjusts in 5 millimeter increments. The last icon allows us to mark the dimension so that we can import it into a drawing. All right, let's make this dimension 50 millimeters and click OK to close the dialog window. Right-click and select to close the Dimension Property Manager. You see now we've got 3 lines in black. Relations constrain those lines. The blue lines remain unconstrained. We're able to drag them around the graphic workspace. In the status bar, we see that some dimensions are still needed. If I exit the sketch at this point, a minus symbol will appear next to Sketch 1 in the Feature Manager tree. That means that the sketch is underdefined. Let's edit the sketch again and sort this problem out. We'll need to add a second dimension here, or an equal relation if we want to create a square. Let's add another dimension. Let's make it 60 millimeters. Click OK. Now our sketch is no longer in blue lines, but in black lines. Black lines indicate that a sketch is fully defined, which is confirmed for us in the status bar as well, fully defined. Now when I exit the sketch, I don't see the minus symbol next to sketch 1 in the tree. But let's go ahead and edit the sketch again. We're going to add another dimension and see what happens. We get a warning message. Adding this dimension makes the sketch overdefined and unable to solve. Do we want to add as a driven dimension instead? Or we can leave it as a driving dimension. Let's make it a driven dimension. Let's leave the first radio button selected and click OK. And let's right-click and choose Select to exit the Dimension Property Manager. The last dimension we added is in gray. That means it's a driven dimension or a reference dimension. Let's give another example of why we may need to use a reference dimension. Let me get rid of this geometry. And let's create a right triangle now. Now let's smart dimension it. 40 millimeters high, 30 millimeters this way. Lastly, I'm going to apply dimension to the hypotenuse. As I move my mouse around, vertical, horizontal, and aligned dimensions appear. If I want to use an aligned dimension, I right-click, and now the dimension is locked. To unlock it, we right-click again. Let's left-click to place the dimension, and yes, let's make it a driven dimension. Click OK. Right-click and select to close the Dimension Property Manager. We see in the status bar that our sketch remains underdefined. Let's select this point and add a fix relation. Click OK. Now our sketch is fully defined. Let's double-click this dimension and change it to 60 millimeters. Click OK. We can see how the length of the hypotenuse changes accordingly. Basically, a driving dimension controls geometry, and the driven dimension works as a reference. If I double-click and try to edit the driven dimension, I get a warning message. I'm not able to edit it. OK. Let's delete this dimension now. And let's apply dimensions again. This time we're going to leave the hypotenuse dimension as dimension driving. Leave this dimension driving. Click OK. Now the sketch is overdefined and the sketch appears in yellow lines. An overdefined sketch has too many dimensions or relations. Let's double-click on the overdefined message. The Sketch Expert Property Manager opens. I can press Diagnose to find solutions for the sketch error, or I can repair them manually. Let's click Diagnose. In the Results section, I've got 5 solutions presented. These are shown in the graphic area as I click on the arrows. I can scroll through the solutions by clicking on the arrows. If I like any of the solutions that SolidWorks prepares for me, I simply click Accept. Or I can click on Manual Repair and delete some dimensions and relations. Now we've got a green light and the sketch is able to find a valid solution. Let's click OK to exit the Sketch Expert. After the dimension is placed, we're also able to move dimensions. When I select the dimension, 2 handles appear. I can grab and move the dimension. Let me give you another example with this circle. Let's apply some dimensions. We'll accept the default value. Now I'm able to grab and drag the handle. Let's move it out to this point and click OK. Select this point, add a fix relation. Once again, we have a fully defined sketch. And let's exit the sketch. One more thing I forgot to show you that I'd like to cover in this lesson on dimensions. Let's edit our sketch again and create a 3-point arc. Third point. Now let's dimension it. If I want to dimension the length of the arc, I click on the arc and then I can just place the dimension about here. Let's accept the default value and exit the sketch. And this concludes our lesson about dimensions.